to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Shawnee, set it off, man. Your peoples are here.
Yo, Ebro in the Morning.
Yeah.
Laura Stiles, Rosenberg,
Yes.
Shawnee Culture. I am here. And we have an amazing person here today who has done tons of work for the community. And I'm going to let her explain herself as we continue to take this journey with her.
Okay.
Her name is Dana Rachlin.
Dana!
Dana, good to
Yes.
see you.
So nice to see you guys. Thank
Good to see you, too.
Shawnee's downplaying this journey because he's on it as much as
Yeah.
I am. He's
How did you guys first connect?
Shawnee and I.
Yeah.
This is a great story. Laura was like, you have to come up and talk about some of this raise the age legislation happening. And this was years ago. And I came up and we did that with Jim St. Germain. And then afterwards, we're all just talking. She's like, do you have a second? Can you just talk to my friend? He's like trying to get more into community work. And it was Shawnee. And then we went for lunch and now partners for life. He can't get out of it.
It's true.
To.
I'm trapped.
Cool, right?
I'm trapped.
So it's
But
really
amazing.
because of Laura.
Wow, I didn't even know
Yeah,
that.
Laura set up the introduction. And could you not have another nonprofit, no disrespect? Laura does, Dana does tons of community work. So we sat down and really discussed, what I was doing, what she was doing, and it just made sense to collab,
That's really great. And what do you, Dana, what's your primary focus right now?
So we are working on, we have been working on this movement called We Build the Block, which Shawnee is a co-founder of. It was born out of all the work that him and I were doing separately and then kind of collectively with Michael K. Williams leading up to 2020. And then when the pandemic hit, we kind of were like, we have to figure out how to do this more intentionally, this work, right? Like, what is the work? What is community? Especially when we saw what was happening in communities of color, where Black and brown people were being disproportionately ticketed and summoned and beat up because of social distancing, like crazy stuff. Do you remember that? I mean, that feels like forever ago, right?
Yeah.
And then we had George Floyd happen. And we're like, hey, how can we just be more intentional about the work that we're doing? And so we started We Build the Block, or webuildtheblock.org, which is, again, it was born out of the collective work that we had been doing separately and then also together. And the main focus is, how do you build or create community-led public safety? So how do we make sure that communities are safe in a way that is respectful, that is born and developed and implemented by the community itself.
As opposed to over-policing.
As opposed to over-policing, right, exactly. And so we've been doing different various initiatives around youth employment and empowerment, but specifically, which contributes obviously to public safety, but we've also been modeling what this could look like. So, for example, we work with a crew that was in the height of a gang war and put those boys in group therapy and being really intentional about who was getting services. And guess what? They stopped, the shooting stopped. And Shawnee's got to meet those young guys. They're amazing. They're so talented.
Yeah, because the thing is with the... A lot of times with politics, it feels like it doesn't trickle down into the neighborhoods, and We Build the Block is about really building it from the ground up. So with having a concentrated group of kids, and we've had conversations where when you deal with one kid from the community, they feel like an outcast amongst their friends and they can't go back to the neighborhood. They can't be cool and still try to be like an outsider.
Right.
So when you have the community group come together, and you can build with them and they can discuss their real issues and what's going on in their houses and how they feel, they're able to move as a collective and kind of have this therapy session together and be vulnerable together. So this overall shooting didn't stop because this is what goes on in New York City and across the world. But within this group, you see they try to move in a way that is just more productive. And it's easier when you have friends with you. So that's a part of building the block, getting them all in a space where they can talk freely about their experiences and just kind of evolve. And that's a part of the issue.
One thing that's really important about Dana's work is she also, and a couple of us were part of this. Me, Juanito, I think Shani went down to the precinct too. So Dana was building relationships within the community with the kids in the community and the officers who police those areas. So I remember going to the precinct because she got them to have a space where kids from the community could come to the precinct, do homework or extracurricular activities, just build bonds with some of the police officers who are not from those neighborhoods. And so they can see them as people. You know what I mean? And
right.
And even when speaking to these police officers, one of them told me, he's like, I learned more from them. She was like, we're supposed to be bonding, but like, I've learned more from the students. The students are kids, you know what I mean, of the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But some of these police that get thrown in from like, white suburban neighborhoods, they get thrown into the middle of the hood, they react differently to their surroundings. So now actually having FaceTime and having community, building community with them, they get to know like, oh, wait a second, that is so-and-so from the neighborhood. So they no longer look at them as just like, oh, that's a perp. You know what I mean?
Right.
They actually know who these kids are, which I think is super important.
Yeah, and seeing them as people is very key.
Yeah.
So we've had these social justice dinners that we were doing once a month. We have police officers, you have kids from gangs in the community, you have myself, you have her, you have Michael K. Williams, and you have like commissioners and Eric Adams before he was the mayor, he sat there, and then you have influencers, and you have Nick Cannon came to some, Styles P came to some, where you sit down and everybody is just sitting at this table as a person. Right? So now you get to hear from the police, because when we look at the police in the community, they're the bad guys to us, right? But now we get to hear their perspective as a person and how they see the neighborhood. But now the police officers also get to see the kids, because they're looking at them like, you're all the same.
Right.
And
they get to hear the perspective of the kids too.
Like similar to the young people, our ethos is very much around what Michael gave to the world, which was like, we need to operate from a place of harm reduction and healing and loving on one another, even when it's hard. And unfortunately, policing is a system and a structure and an institution that just breeds, whether you're from the white guy in Staten Island or Long Island, or the black guy who grew up in a housing development in the place that you service now. Policing can suck you in, and it could change your behaviors and alter who you are as a person. And we have to figure out ways. This is why we talk about community-led public safety, because what you said is the young people, we're teaching them, because that's right, because communities know how to keep themselves safe, right? There's no amount of summons or arrests or indictments that are going to make communities safe. That's never going to happen, because if it was, we wouldn't be in the situation we're at right now, right? And there's no amount of conversations that are going to improve police-community relations, because if there were, we wouldn't have been in the situation we were 2 years ago. But what we can do is say, what are the resources and things that each of us have, and how can we contribute to what we call a public safety ecosystem? Mm-hmm. And police have a ton of resources. Now, are they using those resources in a way that makes the most sense for the community, that helps communities keep themselves safe? Like Rasan and I were talking about, the music videos being filmed. Well, what happens is these music videos get filmed, they don't have permits, that gives the police the right to run down on them. And then even if there's no guns or anything there, there's another opportunity, because you're known to the department. Now you're going to get a ticket for loitering. Oh, you don't got your ID, I got to arrest you. Why are we not educating people on how to get permits? Simple things like that could just decrease the amount of interaction, and then you're part of the whole community, right? And you're operating in a really legitimate way. And so our hopes are, to keep modeling. In Brownsville, we have something called the Brownsville Safety Alliance, where in real time we're diverting 911 and 311 calls from the 911 operator to crisis management systems.
How do you do that? What's the process to getting them to do that?
So we had a really incredible commander in Brownsville, Inspector Terrell Anderson, who saw that he had this steady footpost on this block, and despite that footpost being there, he had a drive-by shooting, and there was a police-involved shooting, and there's chronic quality of life stuff happening. So obviously the steady footpost of cops is not really making a difference. But again, communities know how to keep themselves safe. Communities have resources. So he identified somebody in the precinct who would field the calls coming in through the 911 system. NYPD owns the 911 system, so understand that that's like, you have to get it through them, unless we want to change that, which is possible. Stay tuned. And he was calling, we had identified a person part of the crisis management system, BIGA, from Bevo, Brownsville and Violence Out, who would get the call and then dispatch his team to handle it. And you're talking about things like somebody's acting erratically and drunk in the liquor store. That could easily become a real problem, right? Like we know, because next door in the nail salon, that became a police-involved shooting when a drunk guy was in there. But now you have somebody from the community, of the community, going in, diffusing the situation. And guess what? Now the 2 or 4 cops that would have been taken off patrol to handle that erratic drunk person, bring them to the hospital, they detox, whatever,
They
and then
can
come
stay
back
where they
out.
need to be.
Now they stay where they need to be.
Right.
So it's cost efficient, it's community led and implemented, and it's all around harm reduction, because now we don't have the police interaction. And we're also connecting that individual to services, right? We know who does substance abuse services in the community. How can we get that person connected? So everything that we're doing is really about building out a public safety ecosystem that doesn't center the police department, but centers communities and community needs, and recognizing that they're the experts.
And even when we had like some block parties, we would throw these block parties, or when we did turkey giveaways, Dana would speak to the OGs from the block, you know, to really police the block, so it's not like this whole neighborhood or this whole area is surveillance by tons of policemen, so that people can feel safe, you know, and they kind of letting people know, like, look, this is for us. So everybody be cool, and that's really important. And if you think about the situation that we had, we were speaking about yesterday with Myson,
Right.
and you were saying that this is a situation for like the guardian angels or something like that.
Right.
You know, where the police aren't involved, they're not coming in aggressive, but somebody needs to take action. When I went to Myson's page, he states on there, I feel like a few of us need to pull up to this area and kind of, you know, govern this situation, because our elders should not be afraid to come out of their house for fear of being beaten by sticks.
Right.
From teenagers, yeah.
From teenagers. And it just, you just need to know that there's like love in this neighborhood. You're not going to treat the elders like this, and you just need some authority that's not necessarily going to look at you as an alien and throw you into a system to corrupt your whole life.
And so that's the whole thing, is not being isolated, not forcing people into shame. If you're committing harm, Michael used to say, some people, we're like belly buttons. Some people are innies and some people are outies. Some of us hurt ourselves, right? Michael was doing self-harm, and some of us hurt others. We carry guns and we're doing shootings or other things, sticks outside of apartment buildings.
Right.
But if we could show compassion and love to those who are committing harm, and you bring them into the fold, then you've reduced that. And that's how we keep ourselves safe. That's how we recognize mental health and the trauma that we're all experiencing, some more than others because of America. But, so I encourage everybody, the reason why I came today was I encourage everybody to go out and get Mike's memoir. It came out yesterday, featuring Shawnee culture, talking about our movement. It's available everywhere.
Scenes from my life.
It's from my life.
Yeah, and this is, you know, God rest his soul, he passed suddenly, you know, just not too long ago. So these are a lot of his final thoughts. And it's very deep. I would definitely take time and have some pictures from some of the last days, take some time and connect to this book, because, you know, this is a man with internal pain and was seeking redemption in some respects, you know, and doing it through his work. And his heart was always in a space where he wanted to reach out and connect with people. He always wanted to give back, and he always felt like being able to return back to your neighborhood and be accepted and being loved was more important than any of the other you know, work that he's ever done.
He was at everything.
He was at everything. He was Uncle Mike, you know, when he was filming. We were taking kids down to see him where he was filming. They were FaceTiming him all the time. But, you know, when we think about Michael's legacy and what he leaves behind, you know, The Wire, all these gorgeous shows, Mike was a community member who really loved, right? And I mean that. He loved. He figured out how to love his so-called enemies, and sometimes the enemy is inside of you. And so Mike's legacy lives in all of us. If we can have this like enormous amount of love around us and for others. And that's like really what we're trying to do, is maintain Mike's legacy and operate from that place of love and healing. And I'm just so grateful for our partners that have helped us get through this time, and for everybody that goes out and buys the book.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of his piece was that he was not perfect, right? And none of us are. And he wanted you to be better than he was. And he used his platform to show you, look, I made it out. You can too, and you can be better than me. You know what I mean? So.
And make sure you come back when you do make it out.
Yeah, and then come back.
So where we running?
Give back.
Running from, so.
You know what I'm saying? So, but again, to the other piece really quick, you know, to the Erica Fords who try to do community policing, the Mysons up in the Bronx, Erica in Queens, my people Penn and Perry out in Staten Island, you know, us trying to do stuff in Brooklyn. It's really important to have this communal piece where we step in and just we see ourselves in these kids, because I was one of those kids, you know, look rough, naughty head, but inside you just trying to get by, and your outer, you know, we're going to be rebels when we're teenagers, and your outside is going to look harder than the inside because you have to survive and you can't look soft out here. So sometimes you can be stereotyped and that can work against you, but this is the way you survive in these neighborhoods. So, but we need one of us to be able to identify, yeah, he looks tough, but he's just wearing his soldier's uniform, right? His soldier's outfit in order to get home. But we know who you are, and we know how to handle you and deal with you and make sure that you get home safe.
Beautifully said. The book is called Scenes from My Life, a memoir by Michael K. Williams with John Sternfeld. Really looking forward to reading this. And Dana, thank you for coming by.
Yes,
Thank you for the work that you do and continue to do.
Yes, we appreciate you. And like the media is, I have to just say this, like the media is super important in either moving us forward or moving us back. And we're having things on a loop about like violence, and you know, I'm getting worried that we're going back to like super predator territory. We're talking about cutting restorative justice money from schools at a time when kids haven't been in school for 2 years. Mental health. We're talking about like bail reform rollbacks. All of this stuff is dangerous, and we're sending messages that are not rooted in facts or truth.
Agreed.
And so the media has a huge responsibility. So I know you guys have Erica up here. I know you talked about my son, everybody, like really lifting up people doing good work from the community and talking about the success stories, because they far outweigh the sensationalized, salacious stories that we're hearing.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you guys always being a really solid media source.
Well, we appreciate
Thank
the work
you.
you do consistently. And it was always so cool seeing what you and Shawnee did together. And obviously Michael was such an inspiration when, you know, his loss was felt by everyone. You know, absolutely.
Together we build the block.
That's right.
That's what it's about.
Shawnee Culture, Dana Rachlin. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.